Trains are not alive. They do not think. They do not choose. They move because they are told to move. That is what makes them safe. Steel bound to steel, guided by signals and switches that reduce motion to certainty. A train follows its route the way blood follows veins. Predictable. Unquestioning. Obedient. That is why rail workers know something is wrong the moment a train behaves differently. Because when something without a mind begins to hesitate, it means something else has taken notice. There is a stretch of railway that cuts through a forest so dense that daylight struggles to reach the ground. No towns nearby, no houses, no reason for anyone to be there once the sun goes down. The tracks curve gently through the trees, never allowing a clear view ahead. The forest presses in close, branches arching overhead as if the land itself is trying to close the corridor behind anything that passes through. During the day it feels abandoned. At night it feels patient. Rail workers call it dead track. Not because trains do not use it, but because every train that passes through it feels diminished on the way out, as if something has been taken that cannot be measured. Years ago, just after midnight, a freight train entered that line. It was scheduled to pass through without stopping. No delays, no unusual cargo, nothing that should have mattered. 2 men were on board, an experienced engineer and a younger conductor. Both had run the route before. Both checked in over the radio as they crossed into the forest. Their voices were calm, routine, unconcerned. Then the signal began to fade. Not cut, not drop, fade. As if something had slowly moved between the train and the rest of the world. Dispatch called again and again. No response. By morning, the train had missed every checkpoint. Search crews were sent out expecting wreckage, bent steel, fire, something violent enough to explain absence. They found nothing. The rails were untouched. No sign of breaking, no disturbance in the gravel, no indication that anything had gone wrong. The track simply continued into the forest. Empty. The disappearance was quietly erased. The train was listed as lost due to administrative error. Records were adjusted, schedules rewritten. The line remained open, but the people who worked it noticed the change immediately. The forest grew louder at night, not with animals, with movement. Maintenance crews reported hearing something travel along the rails long after the last scheduled train had passed. A sound too heavy to be wind, too rhythmic to be falling branches. The sound of wheels, steel striking steel, not approaching, passing through, then stopping. Right beside them. One worker described standing in the dark, unable to move, knowing something enormous was next to him without ever seeing it. The air felt displaced, as if something massive occupied space without shape. He could smell oil, metal, heat. When he turned his light toward the tracks, there was nothing there. The sound vanished the moment he moved. Engineers began to feel it through the controls. A resistance. Not enough to slow the train, just enough to be felt, as if the rails were crowded, as if something else was moving where nothing should be. Radios started picking up sounds that were not static. A steady rhythm. Perfectly timed. Matching the speed of the train exactly. The sound never announced itself. It simply appeared, as if it had always been there and the radio had finally noticed. When engineers slowed down, the sound slowed. With them. When they stopped, it vanished. Signal operators began noticing brief flashes on their boards. A train identifier appearing for seconds before disappearing. An old identifier. Retired. The number assigned to the missing freight train. They were told it was a glitch. Old systems misbehave. Fatigue makes patterns where none exist. Then the identifier appeared again. This time it moved. Late at night it would appear at the edge of the forest and begin to advance along the route. Not quickly. Not slowly. At exactly the speed the missing train should have been traveling. Never deviating. Never stopping. Operators who watched it too long reported headaches. Nausea. A sensation of pressure behind the eyes, as if something was pushing back against their awareness. as if observing it was not permitted. Thermal cameras were installed along the line to monitor wildlife. They recorded something else, a heat signature stretched along the rails. Segmented. Continuous. The exact length of the missing train. It moved without visible source. No sound. No light. When the footage was examined closely, something became clear. The heat was not on the rails. It was beneath them, as if the train were passing through the ground itself, close enough to disturb the surface but never breaking through. Engineers began refusing the line. Those who could not avoid it described the same experience, a moment when the forest would go silent, not gradually, instantly, as if sound itself had been removed. Then the vibration would begin, low, deep, felt more than heard, a pressure that climbed up through the feet and settled in the chest, as if something vast was approaching without disturbing the surface of the world. Some felt watched, not from the trees, from below. One engineer reported seeing the fog ahead distort, unnaturally, bending around something that refused to take shape. His controls became sluggish. His radio filled with the sound of wheels, louder now, overlapping his own, not following, matching. When he reached the end of the line, the sensation released him all at once. He collapsed on the platform, shaking. He never returned to work. Hikers near the forest began reporting strange experiences, vibrations beneath their feet, a sense of urgency, a compulsion to move faster, to leave. Some heard a horn, low, distant, mournful, always behind them, never ahead. Campers reported lights moving through the trees. Not headlights, not lanterns. Something colder, something that did not illuminate its surroundings. It simply existed, moving parallel to the tracks, always moving, never stopping. The railway company denies everything. They say there is no missing train, no anomalous signals, no unusual recordings, but workers know better. They say the line is not haunted, it is occupied. They say the train did not crash, it did not derail, it did not stop. It continued. Somewhere it was never meant to go, still bound to its route, still obeying its schedule, still moving through the same stretch of forest every night. Not fully present, not fully gone. They say that sometimes if you stand close enough to the rails you can feel it before you hear it. A tightening in the chest, a pressure behind the eyes, as if your body senses something your mind cannot process. And if you listen closely, you will hear it. Not loudly, not clearly, just enough to know it is there. The sound of wheels, the sound of motion without arrival, a train that never stopped moving. Because some systems do not fail, they persist, and the rails remember everything that ever passed over them.